In 1982, a truck driver named Jake was traveling through a desolate stretch of highway in rural Nevada. Jake had been on the road for years, crisscrossing the country, and thought he had seen it all. Late one night, as he drove under a pale moon, he saw something that made him slow down. A young woman standing on the side of the road. She was barefoot, dressed in a flowing white dress, and she looked lost. Jake hesitated. He had heard stories of people being tricked or robbed when they stopped to help strangers. But something about her seemed different. She looked fragile, almost ghostly, under the moonlight. Against his better judgment, he pulled over and rolled down his window. "Need a ride?" he asked. The woman nodded silently and climbed into the passenger seat. She didn't say a word, just stared straight ahead. Jake tried to make small talk, but she wouldn't respond. Finally, in a voice so soft he could barely hear her, she said, "Don't go to the old bridge." Confused, Jake glanced at her, but before he could ask what she meant, she was gone. The seat beside him was empty. Jake slammed on the brakes, his heart pounding. He pulled over and searched the truck, but there was no sign of her. Shaken, Jake drove to the nearest diner to gather his thoughts. When he told the locals what had happened, their faces went pale. They told him about the legend of the hitchhiker, a woman who had been abandoned on that road decades ago and died near the old bridge. Her ghost, they said, appeared to warn travelers. In 1994, a young couple named Sarah and Mike were driving cross-country to visit family. It was late at night and they were exhausted. When they saw the neon sign for a rest stop, they decided to pull over. The parking lot was empty and the building looked old and run down. Mike stayed in the car to nap while Sarah went to the restroom. Inside, the air felt heavy and the fluorescent lights flickered. Sarah washed her hands quickly, but as she turned to leave, she heard faint footsteps behind her. She spun around, but the restroom was empty. The uneasy feeling grew stronger, and Sarah hurried back to the car. As she reached for the door, she noticed a man standing at the edge of the parking lot. He was tall, with a scruffy beard, and he was staring at their car. Sarah jumped inside and locked the doors. "Mike, wake up," she whispered. "There's someone out there." Mike sat up groggily and looked around, but the man was gone. Relieved, they decided to leave. As they pulled onto the highway, they noticed a pair of headlights in the rearview mirror. A beat-up truck was following them, flashing its high beams and swerving wildly. Panic set in as the truck got closer. Sarah called the police, and they told her to drive to the nearest station. But before they could reach it, the truck suddenly veered off the road and disappeared into the night. When they finally stopped at the station, an officer inspected their car and found deep scratches on the trunk, as if someone had been clinging to it. The officer explained that there had been reports of a serial killer targeting travelers at that rest stop. Sarah and Mike had narrowly escaped. In 1978, a military convoy was traveling through the Mojave Desert. 3 trucks carrying classified cargo were on a routine mission. The soldiers inside were in good spirits, laughing and chatting over the radios as the convoy moved steadily through the night. But as they reached a particularly desolate stretch of highway, something strange happened. The lead truck reported losing radio contact with the rear vehicle. When the driver looked in his mirrors, the truck was gone. Thinking it had broken down, the convoy stopped to investigate. They found nothing. No truck, no soldiers, not even tire tracks. It was as if the vehicle had vanished into thin air. The remaining drivers were on edge as they resumed their journey, but soon the second truck disappeared as well. This time, the lead driver saw it happen. One moment, the truck was there, and the next, it was gone, swallowed by the darkness. Panic set in. The last truck's engine failed, leaving the soldiers stranded in the middle of the desert. Then they heard it, a low humming sound, growing louder and louder. Strange lights appeared in the sky, and distorted whispers filled the air. The final radio transmission from the convoy was a single, chilling phrase. "They are here." When search teams arrived, they found no trace of the convoy. The only evidence was a set of tire tracks that ended abruptly, as if the trucks had been lifted off the ground. To this day, no one knows what happened to the soldiers or their cargo. In 2003, a college student named Emily was driving home late at night after a party. She had taken a shortcut through the woods, a winding road known for its sharp turns and lack of streetlights. As she rounded a bend, her headlights caught a shadowy figure standing in the middle of the road. Emily slammed on the brakes, her tires screeching. When she looked again, the figure was gone. Shaking it off as exhaustion, she continued driving. But a few miles later, she felt it, a presence in the car with her. The air grew cold, and the faint sound of breathing filled the silence. Terrified, Emily refused to look in the rearview mirror. Her hands gripped the wheel as she sped up, desperate to reach the main road. When she finally did, the feeling vanished. But when she got home, she found handprints on the back of her car, as if someone had been holding on for dear life. In 2015, a traveling salesman named Peter checked into a roadside motel after a long day of driving. The clerk gave him a key to room 13, warning him that the room had a history of complaints. Peter brushed it off, thinking it was just superstition. The room was cold and smelled faintly of mildew. As Peter unpacked, he noticed something strange. The mirror on the wall seemed to flicker, as if shadows were moving behind it. Dismissing it as a trick of the light, he went to bed. Around midnight, Peter woke to the sound of whispering. It was faint but unmistakable, and it seemed to be coming from the mirror. Gathering his courage, he approached it and saw nothing. But when he turned away, he caught a glimpse of a figure standing behind him in the reflection. Peter fled the room and spent the night in his car. The next morning, he demanded a refund. The clerk reluctantly admitted that room 13 had been the site of a murder years ago, and guests often reported strange occurrences. Peter never stayed at a roadside motel again. The highway is a place of freedom, but it also harbors secrets. So, the next time you're driving alone, remember these stories. Keep your eyes on the road, and whatever you do, don't stop. Subscribe Crimson Gasp for more chilling tales. The road awaits.